Okay, so here's my clock spring. Just wanted to go over this with yous. Before showing you all the slideshow I'm going to do and do a verbal commentary while I show you the slides. But I've already released a video on it when I messed up and how I went about messing that up, because I had the steering column disconnected from the engine side firewall. So I've repaired it. I've done a multimeter test on it and so forth, and she's all good. Now what I get is I've had to cut about that far off, and that was messed up inside there. To get it apart, I've had to work at these clips here. I can't see exactly because I just kept on working at it, and I'd almost given up to the point of I just kept on trying, and then it just suddenly came apart, and I was like, sweet, I can finally try and repair this. So if I turn this all the way one way, I get to a point where 5.5 turns, and obviously that's what I've written on there too. So I'm missing half a turn. I'm hoping that half a turn isn't going to affect how far this turns in the car. So that's a later video of when I actually install this and try it out. I'm going to get in the car. I'm going to turn the steering wheel all the way one way, and then I'll count how many times that steering wheel turns to know if it'd be pointless putting this back in, or if I'd get away with putting that back in with only doing 5.5 turns. And failing that, I do have one from an EL that I'm looking at. Maybe I'll custom fit that in place of the one for the AU. So I'll get to the photos and I'll explain to you through the photos of what I did. I didn't film it as I was doing it because it was done over stages of, first of all, trying to get this apart. And then when I got it apart, I found all that mess in there, and I had to think about what I was going to do to work that out. And this here is all customized now. It's all soldered and trimmed. So I'll explain that in the slideshow. Okay, so this is what I got when I pulled it out. The clock spring had actually come off from here, and about 3 inches back of it was all destroyed and messed up. So I've had to cut about 3 inches back of it. But when I got to this here, I tried to solder onto here and it just melted. So I couldn't solder the ribbon back onto these wires here. So what I've done is I've just cut this part away here a little bit, and then I've pulled each wire out from this section here. And then when I got to that point, I was left with this wires here. I didn't have to worry about color coordination, like which wire went where, because I already had a photo of that. So then when I got to this point here, I cleared the ribbon back a little bit, and soldered all the ends on here. And then we got to this point here, so I started soldering the wires directly to the ribbon, and using a heat shrink. Now all the wires started off like this, but I just clipped it off a little bit to make it tidy before soldering back on. This one here, I had actually forgotten to put heat shrink on, but you can see the rest of them I was putting heat shrink on, so I knew I wasn't going to have any problems with when I put that switch back in, that none of these wires were going to touch each other. That one that doesn't have heat shrink doesn't matter. I could have missed heat shrink on every second one if I wanted to, just to bring these wires in closer into that switch if I wanted to. Didn't know that at the beginning, but it probably would have helped towards the end of when I'm pushing it back in. So that's how I've got all this here. And the reason why that says up there is because, I'll go back a bit, this is where the ribbon came from, and that's facing up towards me. And when the ribbon came out here, the side that was facing me was up, so that's why I named it up. But if I didn't name it and I've forgotten, and if these wires were in the right sequence but in reverse, again I could just fold that ribbon to match. It wouldn't have mattered. So once we got to this point here, everything's good. I've got the ribbon tied back there with electrical tape so it doesn't unwind on me. Now when I got to this point here and I folded it, this part of the tape came separate. So to fix that, because the rest of this was still good, to fix that part that had come off, I just got a bit of metal weld. It's kind of like JB weld to put on here, just to secure all these wires weren't going to come loose and touch each other there. Then I've had to hold with my finger there for 15 minutes, which was a very boring 15 minutes. And then once after that, and the tape was staying held down, and the metal weld was feeling nice along here that I could touch, then I just put a alligator clip on that just to hold it in place while I cleaned this up. I had to cut away all the wire guides that were in here for this new way that I've soldered to be able to fit through there, because I wanted to be able to put it all back the way it came back out. And that's just another angle to give you a close-up of, you know, it's cut out. I know it's not the cleanest job, but it was good enough. So that's it there again, just a different angle, just it's all cut away in there. Now this part here, this slides over the wires to be able to come out. This locks it all into place. So I've had to cut this way as well, because obviously there's no ribbon that's going through there anymore. It's soldered wires that's coming through there. So that was an obstruction that wasn't going to let this part slide back on with that piece there in the way. So that's just a close-up of how I've got it folded into there and ready to go back together. This is the cutout there that I was talking about, that would slide over the top and hold all that locked into place. That's, I'll just go back, that part there would slide into there. So now that I've got it cut away, I can slide this plastic piece back over the top and use that locking pin. And that was when I was sliding it back in there. And this part here, you have to fold it as well to go into that shape there to get that slid back on. And you can see where I've written up is to the outside of that ribbon, and that's all ready to go back together there. And now that's all slid back in, and I've slid this piece back over, putting this pin back in. This is gonna, the reason I've got this, because this is still going to stop this sliding down, so it's still playing the part of its original job. But I couldn't get that to push back in through the hole because the end of it wasn't flared properly to slide in, and I didn't want to smooth it out because then that would allow the pin to slide back out. So what I did was I got a soldering iron and I just pushed against the end of it to heat it up and push that pin the rest of the way. The pin pushed about halfway, and then I got pliers because I knew it was hot, and then I just squeezed it to push it the rest of the way through. And knowing that that pin is not smooth on the other side, I know that now that it's not going to come back out as well. So this is how I've finished all up, and it's all back together. And you can see the wires here, they're not overly messy. A bit more heat applied to those heat sinks as well was applied, so they closed properly. And then I've taped it all up just to make it look pretty. I didn't have to, just I felt better about covering all that with electrical tape. And that's pretty much a job done. So now she's all ready to go back in, and I know that this is going to work. The problem is, will I have enough turns? Now that I'm missing half a turn, am I still going to have enough turns? It says here that something 2.5 turns, so that would equal up to 5 turns in total. I can't read that there. To recenter, rotate in the direction of the arrow until tight, then rotate in the opposite direction to approximate the turns, which is what I've done. I showed you in the beginning of the clip. Go all the way one way, go all the way the other way. I get 5.5 turns in total. This arrow here indicates that the direction I've got to have that pointing when I install it. And So that's ready to go back in, and happy days. But I'm gonna have to go in the car, turn the steering wheel myself, and find out if it is 5 turns in total, like you got the 2 here. Then I've got just enough to make 5.5 turns, so this should be perfectly fine to go back in and working again. But I'll find that out in the next clip that I make for you, is when I actually put this back in to test it. And you know, my horn and everything should work again once I put this back in. I do have an EL, it's either an EL or an EF clock spring that's coming to me. My brother's sending me one. So if this doesn't work out for me, I'm going to make another clip on customizing one that's meant for an EL into an AU. I don't think there's going to be much customizing at all. I'm pretty sure it's going to be same clock spring, just different connections on the ends, which I just have to swap the connections over. We'll cross that bridge when it happens. But for now, yeah, stay tuned, because in a couple of days I'm going to actually install this back into my AU and find out if repairing this and getting 5.5 turns out of it is going to be efficient. If I wanted to, I guess that I could replace the whole ribbon inside there, as long as it was long enough to make 6.5 turns. I could just rewind this myself, replace the whole ribbon. Rather not, but the purpose of this is because you might not be able to buy one of these or order one of these wherever you live or something, and I like to fix things rather than chucking them out and replacing. At least give it a go first, and if it turns out, then it saves me $140 buying a new one. If it doesn't, and if the one for the EL doesn't work out, then I have to bite the bullet and buy one. But for now, we'll see how we go. Sorry I didn't make the video recording of pulling all this apart and every step I did with video footage. It's just that I just didn't know if this was going to turn out or not, and I figured I'll just take some photos as I go along. So if I was successful, at least I could do a slideshow for you and do some commentary and let you know how this went. And yeah, it turned out well. So and it's all tested out as well. I use the multimeter to test every single connection, and everything worked out properly. There's no shorts between wires. Like each wire ohm tested correctly, so I've got each wire is connected and there's no shorts between the wires, so we're good to go. The reason why there's cardboard in here is because the airbag wire, when you unplug it, it actually shorts out there. I'm not really too sure the purpose of that. I guess so the airbag doesn't go off, which means that when I put this in, I'm going to have to disconnect the battery, because I have a fear of airbags going off. So I'll just, for safety purposes, disconnect the battery before plugging the airbag back in. And yeah, I'll show you that clip when it's done and everything working. Okay, so once again, thanks for watching, and stay tuned. Cheers, guys.